Welcome to Regular Talk. I'm your host, Trail Productions. I got a special guest in the building. He's a Northside representative. He's a man who's into pushing kids to the next level. This man preaches discipline. I went down this man's timeline researching him, and I've seen that word discipline probably 100 times. He's a city league champion. He's an engineer who transitioned into teaching. Only bad thing I can say about this guy is he's a Commodore, man. Welcome, man. How you doing, man?
All right, glad to be here.
All right, man. I appreciate it, man. I just wanted to pick people's brains who I'm fans of, man, just to be a resource platform, to give out information and just, man, try to get people to the next level, man. I want to hear people to hear your journey. All right, let's start from the essence, man. Start from the beginning. Northside, man. Tell me about your childhood in Northside.
Oh man, born and raised North Side. What more can I say? It's a family environment for me. Grew up with both parents, one little brother. And my dad instilled in me like hard work, and that's where I get it from. It was kind of I had hardships growing up, little bumps and bruises, along the way, like your average black man. But I fought through those adversities, you know what I mean, and came out on the other side, and I know what it's like, and that's what I preach to these young boys today.
When did you first start playing sports?
At the age I was in sixth grade. Sixth grade, they had a wrestling team at Allegheny Middle School, and I was like, "What's that?" I'm thinking, it's something on TV, wrestling. Went down to the gym. It was far from it. But all my classmates and my friends was doing it, so I just jumped right in, and that became my sport. Was wrestling.
Give me some of them dogs you was wrestling with.
Uh, William Stringer, Derek Steele, Todd Kearney, Andre Patterson, Eugene Goodwine, Nino Matthews. Some of the guys I was with growing up, from sixth to eighth grade. Majority of them went to Oliver, and only two of us went to Perry, me and Eugene Goodwine.
What about the coaches? How was your coach?
Coach, Mr. Wilson, he was a black man, and we didn't have a lot of black teachers or a lot of black, men to look up to, and also Chris Edmonds. Chris Edmonds was the assistant coach. He came out of college, out of Slippery Rock at the time, so he was a young guy. He's an old man now, but he was young at the time, and those are the two guys we look up to, and I still get chills today that I'm in the position of where I'm at, because of him, and I take some of his leadership style that I remember in sixth and seventh grade, and I apply it, to my students as well.
How'd you do in middle school record-wise?
Record-wise, starting out sixth grade, not too good. Seventh grade, not too good. But eighth grade, I was able to win the championship at 80 pounds. Yeah.
Let's fast forward to Perry, pre-sports, before any sports. How was it walking in to Perry as a freshman?
It was difficult, man. I seen walking the hallways. You seen athletes. You seen Rod Rutherford, Corey Oakes. Chuck Griffey. Those guys walking the hallways. And it wasn't intimidating, but you was in good company. The aura was a winning. It was a winning spirit. In that school back then.
How was the first? Did you wrestle your ninth grade year?
I didn't crack the lineup, but I was on the team.
Okay, so how'd you do your sophomore year?
Sophomore year, I got all the way to the city championship. I didn't win. I lost to a guy named DeJuan Sharpie. He was from Carrick.
Okay, who was your coach at
Coach at Perry was Tom Chappis and Mr. Ward.
I want people to understand wrestling too, because I hooped, so basketball and wrestling around the same time. So we ain't really get to see the practice and all that. But when I let my son wrestle, that's when I really understood wrestling's like real life. Everything's a counter, everything's a strategy. Just speak on just the importance of wrestling.
There's a lot of parallels to life situations. It's like it's you and your opponent. You know what I mean? You didn't have 11 guys to depend on or four more guys to depend on a team. It was just you and your opponent. And whether you were down or you were up, you had to fight through, what was in front of you. Sometimes you would come out on top, sometimes you would come out on bottom, but you can parallel that to life adversities. You know what I mean? To never give up. There's always another opportunity. So that's how I teach my students to approach it, and that's how I approached it.
Okay. Oh, what year did you win the city champ?
I won it 1999 and the year 2000 when I graduated. So I won it my 11th grade year and my 12th grade.
Talk about that. How was that?
It was I had to cut weight, you know what I mean? So it was very difficult and challenging. I was hitting my growth spurts and, watching other people eat at lunchtime. That became difficult for me, you know what I mean? But and back then there was no proper way to diet, you know what I mean? So that was the other side of that. So that was the difficult part. But you know, fighting through that battle and preparing um, for the championship, it just had me mentally tough. You know what I mean? Like nothing can stand in my way during that time. I was ready to take on whatever was in front of me. You know.
Do you think wrestling's like on the back burner? You think it's like a back burner sport
It,
that people skip
it
over?
is. It is. Because I think a lot of people don't understand, especially in our culture, our African American culture. I think it's not one that's embraced like football and basketball, of course. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like the stepchild of sports, in our city league. We don't get a lot of highlight. We don't get a lot of notice. You know, it's hard to say. Like even in Westinghouse, it's a struggle to even get participation. You know what I mean? But through all that, people know that we're here. You know what I mean? And people respect it. So
Okay. Did you go to college?
I did. I went to Clarion University.
Did you wrestle there?
I I I was I wasn't on the team, but I didn't crack the lineup. You know what I mean? They had this dude from Florida. Like I just couldn't get past. And their training was a lot harder. I wasn't ready for. You know what I mean? Of course, our city league, we practiced, but we didn't do no collegiate practice like some of these high schools prepare their student athletes. When I got up there, it's D1, of course. It was a totally different environment that I wasn't ready for. So
Okay. Did you finish Clarion?
yes.
Okay. So you're transitioning from coming home. Before we get into that, do you have any advice for kids that's coming home who maybe finished college or didn't finish college? What do they do? Do this period of time, that's a tough time. Like when you finish school and you're not pretty much sure what you want to do.
It's a hard period. My advice is get with somebody that you know is successful, somebody typically in your lane that you see yourself doing, and pick their brain on where to navigate to. It's not going to be easy. I know when I came home, there was a different stretch. I also went to the military. You know what I mean? Because my parents got divorced, and it was kind of like, oh, I was, on my own. I didn't know which way to go. So, going to the military gave me that extra confidence where I could, take on any challenge. You know what I mean? If I can complete that, I know I can complete anything.
Okay. How'd you get into coaching?
Coaching came second nature. My dad was a coach. He coached me and my brothers growing up. My brother is actual coach for Central Catholic football team. So he's a coach also. So our roots is from my dad. You know what I mean?
How important is accountability and work ethic to you as a coach?
Accountability is important. Accountability is self-awareness. If you don't have those things, you're not able to show up the next time or being dependable. Where people can depend on you if you don't have accountability. So it's very important for somebody to have that.
How's it dealing with the high school kids? Because they know it all. They got they don't want to stereotype no kids, man, because I love them as well. But they teenager. How's it dealing with that?
It's good and bad. It's very rewarding, to the ones you reach, and it's very tough to the ones that just, don't care. You know what I mean? But you don't give up on them. You know what I mean? Just because they don't care, because eventually, I have some students that come around now. You know what I mean? They're at first they wasn't coming to class, but now they're coming to class. You know what I mean? So it's very rewarding when you start seeing the improvement out of students. You know what I mean? You never want to give up on them, and that's how I approach it.
Why do you think that I won't even know whose job this is, but they don't put knowing the coaches' influence, they don't put the coaches in the schools.
And I think I don't know where that barrier is. You know what I mean?
I got in, by the grace of God, also by Dr. Anthony Hall.
You know what I mean? I grew up with him. He graduated from Perry also. He got his doctorate degree, and he's on a mission to pull people up. You know what I mean? And I was one of the recipients from that. He's the athletic director at Westinghouse, and he kind of placed me in where I'm at. Teaching geometry, and also gave me the position of head coach for the wrestling team. But there's a huge barrier to where there's a lot of community developmental mentors that are out there that need to be in schools, because to build that community relationship with students and community. I don't know what the barrier is. Maybe the guys aren't qualified or whatever reason, but I know it needs to be more of it.
I love what they're doing out there with y'all. Give me the impact of Coach Dante Green down there.
Oh, it's huge. Dante Green, what he has done has been remarkable. You know what I mean? I don't technically remember what Westinghouse was before he got there, but I know since he has been there, it's been a huge impact. When even students in my class, football players that goof off, I'll tell Coach Green, they straighten right up. You know what I mean? He's a huge presence, in the school. He's a huge presence on the field. He's a leader of men. You know what I mean? He's great. He has a great program, great assistant coaches. He's always willing to lend a helping hand. He's a selfless person. He shows great leadership. I parallel him a lot to Coach Tomlin. You know.
Why do you think people still kind of overlook Westinghouse?
Yeah, I think that the culture and the stigma is still over Westinghouse. But there are it's a great school within the school. There's a lot of statistical things that people can pull up that won't be pleasant. That might be one of the reasons why there's, I think it said 5% of our students are proficient in math. Which is below average. But other than that, a school is a school, and they promote higher learning and want to get kids to improve and things like that, just like a regular school. So I think the stigma still follows them a little bit these days.
Okay, well, let's fast forward too, man. You're an engineer, man. I want to know two. I got two questions. How was your road to becoming an engineer, and explain what an engineer is, just to people who don't know.
Right. Well, first, how I got into it, after I got in the military, I got in a job in a manufacturing company in quality. And then, from quality, they had openings for advancement, and I was able to go to school. They put me through higher learning in school, through engineering, leadership, and tech leads. All it is, mainly engineering, is creating and building stuff, from scratch. I was able to be fortunate to be on a team to develop products to go on a lunar module that went up in space. I don't think it went up yet, but pretty soon, within the next couple of years, the lunar module that lands on the next moon was developed here in Pittsburgh. And, I was a part of that developmental team. You know, it was my career for 15 years, but my shift was I needed, something new. That corporate world, it kind of was for me, but I think it ran its course. My higher purpose is what pivoted me into teaching and coaching. It's tough. My wife will tell you it's a big pay change. You know what I mean? But we got through that part. We managed that part, and I'm happier. I wake up happy. Knowing that I'm gonna make a difference. You know what I mean? Of course, engineering you made a difference too, but we me being black, I wasn't. People would steal my ideas and take ownership of my ideas, and it was like fighting an uphill battle. You know what I mean? And I just didn't want that type of environment. Of course, I could have got another job somewhere, somewhere else, but I'm also the executive director of the Northside Steelers youth football team. Vice president of the Southwestern Pennsylvania Youth Athletic Initiative. So there, those nonprofit things and those areas, really have my intention to do more community work.
I hear that. Now that you look back, hindsight's 2020. When you look at some of your friends like OJ or Gene or Mike and see how they're getting to the next level, how did that make you feel seeing everybody's, taking a bite out of it?
I'm proud. I'm very proud. I'm very happy, and I know they're proud of me also. You know what I mean? We all grew up together and watching each other's families grow and, looking at their pictures of them being on vacation and happy, going to concerts and, seeing them get promotions, awards, getting married, having more children. It's an awesome sight to see. You know what I mean? Especially the friends you grew up with, and you called your brothers.
You spoke of your wife earlier. How important is your wife to you? How important is marriage?
Oh, I I got married when I was 21 years old. You know what I mean? So been married for almost 20 years. But she's my backbone. You know what I mean? She's very smart. She's the head HR person, HR director. I don't want to misquote her position. HR director at Visit Pittsburgh, which is the tourist company to bring tourists. Like they're also had a hand of bringing the NFL draft here to Pittsburgh. She was a big part of that. She's also my our operations director inside the Northside Steelers. You know what I mean? So she keeps us organized and straight, and she keeps me sharp. Whenever I'm having a bad day and things like that, she does all the checks and balances. So us together, we make a great team. You know what I mean? It's not just me; it's her too. You know what I mean? In this generation, it takes two people.
She's the heartbeat. I hear that. I want to ask you a question too, Coach. What did you say to a kid that got one foot in the streets and one foot try to, still play sports?
I say, find your niche. You know what I mean? Of course, we could preach, to them. The streets is a dangerous path to be in. You know what I mean? It's very promising to be on, a better side of life. But even though we tell them, sometimes they got to experience it for themselves. You know what I mean? And usually that's what changes them. You know what I mean? Something may happen to where their best friends they lose their best friend, or somebody get locked up or something like that. But traveling down that road, they experience it for themselves, and you stay on them. You never give up on them. You may not talk to them. You know what I mean? Let them figure their own way, but they got to experience it for themselves.
What's next for you, Coach? What's the ultimate goal?
I'm still searching for it. You know what I mean? But I know I'm in my purpose. I do a lot of studying. I study Moses. you know, how he led all those people out of Egypt. You know what I mean? Even though he led all those people out of Egypt and God told him to do that, out of all those people, there were still naysayers, there were still doubters. You know what I mean? And he's doing what was best for the people, but not everybody, not all the people wanted to follow him. You know what I mean? So I'm still researching that, and you know, I'm dwelling, I'm looking up greats that been there before. You know what I mean? So I currently don't know where I'm headed, but I know, you know, I'm still on the path. I'm searching.
No doubt, man. I want to say, man, I appreciate you, Coach, man. You really didn't have to do this, man. I really appreciate it. I'm a fan of yours. I wanted to, kick some knowledge out, man. You got any shout outs?
Shout out everybody, Westinghouse Wrestling, the principal, Dr. Hill, um, Dr. Anthony Hall, Eugene Goodwine, Northside Steelers, my wife, Michelle Chapman, everybody.
Appreciate you, Coach. Wish you nothing but love, nothing but success, man.
Thank you.
Say no more.